Hi, this is Jack Neville, and you're listening to the Two Furs Angling Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Matt Kleiber from Puget Sound Fly Company. This podcast is brought to you by Puget Sound Fly Company, a brick-and-mortar fly shop located in Tacoma, Washington. For orders, please call 253-472-2420. They mail all across the United States. And Two Furs Angling, a Washington-based fly fishing guide company with the idea to not only help you catch fish, but teach you how to be a better angler. For booking, please email me, Jack, at twofursangling@gmail.com. That's TWOFIRSANGLING@gmail.com. Two Furs Angling Podcast is here to help all anglers, regardless of style. We bring you up-to-date product information, interviews with industry professionals, tips and tricks on setting up your gear, fun fishing stories, and knowledge at no charge to you, the angler. Two Furs Angling Podcast. I'm here with Matt Kleiber, my co-host, and this is episode 2. Today we're going to talk about kind of some gear choices that we use as far as packs go, kind of how we set up our packs depending on if we're fishing out of a boat or kind of what we're fishing for. We'll kind of give a full rundown of our choices of kind of bags, really. And then we will also talk a little bit toward the end. We'll kind of give an intro to who we're going to talk to next week, which is Lucas Choate from Stargazer Fly Company. We ended up pushing it back a week just because of scheduling, but that's going to be next week's episode. And we're going to talk about kind of the Chehalis system. If you guys haven't seen the movie, Patagonia Fly Fishing sponsored a really cool movie about the Chehalis Dam system. You can go to their Instagram page and follow the link. It's a fantastic movie. Check it out. Does a great job of covering kind of all sides of the topic. But we'll get into that with Lucas Choate next week. So without further ado, let's get started here, Matt. So, Matt, you fish for a bunch of things, all sorts of fish all across the world now, even bonefish now.
Yep.
So you definitely have some pretty different pack options kind of across the board between those. So the first thing that we'll touch on is kind of what packs you got kind of floating around in the arsenal, really. And you'll see they're kind of varied. You know, you've got kind of a full spectrum of packs. That way you've got kind of options, really, which I think is the important part, is kind of having different options. You don't know what works where, you know what I mean, until you give something a shot or you see somebody else a lot of times, for most of us using something and you go, that looks a little bit better than what I've got going on, you know, that looks a little more organized. He got his flies out a little bit better. He got, you know, whatever it is, it fit a little bit better. So yeah, just kind of talk us through kind of what you got and why you got it.
All right. Well, we're gonna start with the dry creek boat bags. I have one for tiger muskie, one for bass, one for trout in the rivers, one for trout in the lakes.
Mm-hmm.
I have an other pack that I have also has my tropical fishing, pretty much gear, flies included, and everything like that. But those dry creek boat bags have 2 to 3 main pockets depending on what size you get, and
that's the Sims Dry Creek boat bag for people who aren't familiar with it. That's the newest one, which has basically like a magnetic closure. That's really all that's changed in the last 2 models. They used to have a system that was magnetized, but you had to kind of twist it to open it. They had some issues over time, basically, with people not being able to twist their bag basically back open. So they switched to a real simple buckle system that is magnetized. And the cool part about the Sims one, almost every company has a waterproof boat bag. But the really big part is it's got kind of a pour over top to it, I guess you'd call it. Yeah. So basically, even if you haven't zipped that bag closed, but you let it naturally close, just shut on top of itself without the zipper, because of that kind of overlapping section on the outside, it will still be waterproof.
Yes.
rainproof.
Yep.
You can submerge it, obviously, but the rain coming down on it will not get into the bag. So that's an important part, especially when you're out winter steelheading. The other nice part is I've got a raft. If you're using it in a raft, the whole bottom of it is waterproof. So that's going to protect your stuff inside, whatever you've got, flies, your phone, keys, anything like that from getting wet too. But go ahead, continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the boat bag itself has plenty of room for your flies. Has room for some reels. Has room for a jacket. Some snacks, maybe some water. But overall, I mean, it covers everything that you need for fishing that specific species, and that's why I have so many of them. Is just because I have a variation of species I fish for. I can go in my storage area, grab my one bag, and then I'm set to go ahead and fish. So that's a nice thing. The other part about them is the zipper system. You don't always have to zip it closed. You can just close the lid. You don't have to worry about it. Quick, easy access to anything you really need at that point. It has 2 outer bags. Those are also dry bags as well, and you could put leaders and tippet and things like that inside those pockets.
Yeah.
So that's the great part. It has kind of an inside storage and an outside storage, but regardless, it's all waterproof.
Mm-hmm. And the cool part about those outside storage bags too is, they're not submersible. They've just got the rain tight zipper on them that you would see on like a rain jacket or something like that. So they're really good at, splash proof, basically. Waterproof material though. And they use basically like a MOLLE webbing system on the back of them to connect them to the actual bag. And a feature that I don't see, I would say enough people use, or most people don't even know about, is that you can unclip those bags, and they are the perfect length to fit the standard Simms belt. So if you keep things like some tippet and maybe some flies in them, you could unhook them off of your boat bag while you're going to go fish down the bar or whatever. If you're swinging some flies down a gravel bar, you can jump out of the boat and just unclip those and clip them right onto your belt, and then you're good to go. Super, super easy system. Definitely a cool feature that Simms thought of. And that's something that we see kind of across the board with companies. Like you were saying, you've got multiple boat bags for different species. And that definitely seems to be the case among industry people. It seems like the more you get into this, the more varied your fishing gets, especially in closer time periods. And that's not true of everybody. Some people end up just fishing the Yakima for trout or whatever, you know what I mean? But I would say most people end up liking to fish for a bunch of different stuff all at basically the exact same time. So I know one weekend we could be out trout fishing on the Yakima, and then we could be out fishing in the Sound for salmon, and then we could be out bass fishing all in the same week. And it can be a little bit of a pain to only have one boat box and try and switch all your stuff out every time. I know that sounds absolutely insane probably to most people. They're like, oh my gosh, you'd spent how much on getting a whole new boat bag system so that way you wouldn't have to take 45 minutes and change it out. But you know what? Certain things just it's about making it an easy process,
It really is. And some of those trips, let's say you fish some streams, and then on your way back you're like, hey, let's hit that lake that we saw.
Yeah.
And so you're able to bring 2 boat bags, one that has lake and one has your river.
Yeah.
So you're not having to sort between the two, and then you go home and you have to sort out your lake flies to your river flies, and it's just, to me, I don't have the time to do that.
No, it's not worth it. No. Not in my opinion either.
No, not at all.
Yeah. It is when you're starting out, it's kind of hard to see that issue. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you're not, I remember when I started out, I was like, that's stupid. Like Neil would tell me that he had probably, I don't know, he's probably got 6 boat boxes or something like that broken down, and he doesn't mess with them ever. He's just got everything. He just has to grab the right boat box, which for that guy is a good choice because his planning for trips is well known. He's known for last day going, oh my God, I don't have any of the flies. I don't have any of the tippet. I don't have anything. So that's kind of where I learned that from. And I remember when I started out, and I was like, that's ridiculous.
Oh,
That's just
I
that's
thought it was
just insane.
dumb.
And yeah, I remember that too when you started tying flies. You were like, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. Why would I have all these boat boxes? It takes me 30 minutes. I'll just do it the night before. I'll just start trading stuff out. And then you start to fish more and you go, man, I just got done spending my entire day talking to people at the fly shop about fly fishing. You know what I don't want to do right now when I go home? Is do a bunch of fly fishing stuff
Yep,
and set up
start
my
sorting.
own gear. Yeah, exactly. And figure out what flies work for my trip. And yeah, you just want to grab a box and be on the river. That's just kind of the way it is. And it's always easier to have everything preset, because we're leaving at, early in the morning. A lot of times, it's definitely not uncommon for us to meet in the 4 o'clock range to 4:30 range. So, I mean, you don't want to have to the night before. At least I don't want to have to deal with sorting everything. And if I do, I without fail forget something.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
And
Whether it's mitten clamps
that's
or...
what I was going to say. It could be something small where I'm like, oh, not that big of a deal. I forgot, this box of flies or whatever. Not a big deal. I'll just fish dries instead of nymphs or whatever, Or it could be like you were just saying, it could be mitten clamps, and you could be like, how am I going to tie anything on? How am I pinching barbs? How am I doing anything right now? And then usually you got to steal your buddy's stuff. That's why you have fishing partners.
Well,
though,
that's right.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
why I always carry 2 in all my bags just in
Yeah,
case. So
and
I don't have to do
that's
the
a good
back
rule
and forth.
because I've seen lots of people drop them off boats and all sorts of stuff. Especially if you end up falling in, you're donezo's for the day.
Yeah, especially if it's cold.
I think you're referring to a particular time there that I ended up going into the Quileute system and doing a 15-foot float downriver.
Yep.
Yeah, we were fishing for coho salmon. And the way that the Quileute system kind of works is basically you launch right where the sole duck and the bogus eel system meet. At least that's where we launched. You don't have to. You could launch up on the sole duck, or you could launch up on the bogus eel and float clear down. But we wanted to get into a specific area called the chimney hole, which is like a really deep slot above a gravel bar. And the gravel bar you can walk into and fish pretty easily. So the way that it goes is it's kind of a almost like a switchback system. So on the upper section before the gravel bar, there's a really deep slot that goes into some kind of timber on the right side, and it's probably 500 yards long.
Yeah.
And it shallows out the further down it goes, and then it shallows out to inches deep, and then it crosses sides, so it kind of flips with that gravel bar, and then it shoots over to the left-hand side, and then again it's really deep on the far outside with almost kind of like a landslide basically into it with a bunch of timber. And so on that lower section where the gravel bar is that people can come into, that's where you've got pretty much everyone in Forks in the greater Forks area is plunking, which is basically like throwing a big weight out there with basically like something attached to it that's spinning, and you just kind of leave it out there and wait. You hang out on the gravel bar and kind of wait for, usually they got like a cowbell or something like that to go off. So those fish run up through that system. And if they make it kind of past all the plunkers, they come up through the shallows, and then they dip back into another kind of safer spot for them. And so they dip into the chimney hole, and they kind of run all the way up the chimney hole, and then they'll kind of pass back down and run up and pass back down and run up and pass back down. So they're kind of doing these loops. So what most people do is they get down to the chimney hole as quick as they can, anchor up, and start throwing stuff in there.
Yeah.
Which is what we did that day. We kind of got down there and anchored up, and we were throwing stuff in. And ironically, I had never fallen in before. And I always thought that it would be like from one of the silly things that I do on lakes, standing up on a seat or something like that to get a better casting point, or something like that would be what would do me in and cause me to take a swim. But actually, I just sat down and I leaned over to grab something out of my bag. I don't even remember what, and the seat clip busted, and me in that seat went for a swim.
Yeah.
And it was a cold day. That was some ice cold water, and I'm sure Matt can tell you exactly how it looked.
It was pretty funny, the look on his face when he did the whole feet in the air, hands in the air, falling back into the water, and then the floating, and then your feet hit the ground, and the face of, oh, I can touch here. Okay, we're good. We're good. I'm not gonna drown.
Well, and it felt like it was like almost slow motion as it was happening. Like I could feel it, just like the clip just all of a sudden just went pop, and then I just start to I went like head first.
Yeah.
Because I'm leaning, and it's the seat in a raft is up above the gunnels, I guess you'd call it, would be the equivalent of the boat, because the frame's sitting on top of it, and so it tips over, and I'm holding on to the seat, because that's what you do, right? Is you lean over and you hold on to one side of the seat for security, and basically, I guess I torqued the seat a little too much, and the clip popped, and there I went right into the water. Head first, and then basically waders on and everything, and then basically my boot foot waders on, and then I did probably like 2, maybe 3 paddles, and then I just stood up. It all happened super quick. I went to swim, and then all of a sudden I realized, hey, I could probably just stand up, and I was probably borderline, maybe close to the top of my waders. I'd say probably right about where the pocket starts. So
if we were to the right, like maybe 4 feet, you would have gone into like a 20-foot hole.
Even, yeah, exactly. So the way that it works right there is, you anchor up right on the edge of this huge drop off. So it probably is, probably 12 feet deep in that drop off. And right where I landed, basically, I fell to my left, which was on the shallow side, and probably if I fell to the right, I would have been into some pretty deep water, probably close to 10 feet deep. But thankfully, I fell to my left, and I probably fell into 4 or 5 foot, 4 or 5 foot water. Yeah, so much more reasonable. Needless to say, that was a pretty cold day. And it emphasizes why you should always keep a puffy jacket with you that is dry in your dry bag. So that's what we did. I pretty much stripped down and set my stuff, my jacket and everything on the lean bar, and it was really, really windy that day. So I let the wind dry it all out. And then I did some rowing, and that definitely helped heat me up. But my waders kept me pretty dry. We got down to the gravel bar, and I emptied them out of their water, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, and then I was all right for the rest of the day. You just got to kind of tough it out at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and that brings us back to, the boat bags.
Yeah, gear choice, for sure.
Exactly. What you're going to bring, your spare clothing, what you're going to put it in, make sure it doesn't get sopping wet.
Yeah, well, and like you were saying, so you've got, on a typical float trip when we're out on the coast, you've generally got one boat box. And a boat box, for those who don't know or maybe haven't taken a look at the Sims one, a boat box is broken down into basically 3 compartments. And the compartments are adjustable via Velcro, so you can kind of change the size of each of those pouches. Do you use all 3? You don't have to use all 3. For those who don't know, you can just pull them out, basically. Like I've got one that I mainly use for storage at my house, an old one, and I don't have any of the pockets in that one. I just took all 3 of the dividers out and that's kind of my catch-all for just kind of random fly boxes, fly lines, stuff like that. But you use all 3?
I do. Mm-hmm. So I have like my flies in one.
Is that your middle one?
I usually go from left to right as
Okay.
I'm looking at
So
the
you've
bag.
got flies on your left-hand
Flies
side.
on my left,
Okay.
and then in the middle, I have usually a water bottle, a jacket, maybe
Yep.
some snacks kind of squished down into a
Sure.
small
Sure.
area. And then to the far right, either I have more flies or I have reels put in there. I have big tippet spools,
Yeah.
things like that. Because I like buying the big tippet
Yeah.
spools instead of the smaller ones just because
Sure.
they last longer.
Yeah, and then it's a one-time thing. You're not
Right,
like
and I can
running
just
out on
toss
the
them
river.
in there
Totally.
and we're good. So I mean that's how I have mine set up, and then I have like in my spay bag that I have, like my tips. They're on the outside dry pocket,
Sure.
so that
Sure.
I don't have them just scattered within the inside, and I have room
Yep.
for my flies.
Yep.
So,
And you use in your spay bag at least, right? You use a Plan D boat box.
actually, all my boat boxes I have are all Plan,
Plan
D.
D.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. For those who don't know, Plan D is a Pacific Northwest company that uses basically a hook, almost like your clothing hanger, but a mini hook on the end of the fly boxes for articulated flies. You place the eye of your hook on that first kind of hook, basically. So that way it holds the eye of the hook in place. You then stretch back the back of the fly and place your stinger hook into the foam, which is slotted, and that kind of holds it really securely in place. For those of you who don't steelhead, it's kind of a, it used to be that you just kind of throw them all into a Plano box. That's kind of a pain because basically what happens is everything gets hooked to itself. Either it gets hooked on the Power Pro or Fireline or whatever you're using wire as your trailing hook. They get all entangled with each other. And again, it's kind of a pain to pull out. I know a lot of people who have lost flies on the river trying to untangle one fly from another while they're, waist deep in the water and lose stuff all the time that way. I've definitely lost flies that way before. So that's kind of the benefit to a Plan D system is that it's a pretty easy system and it keeps all your flies very organized. It looks a lot nicer, which looks kind of matter when it comes to your fly box. It helps you recognize what you got in there really quickly. You can just bust open the box. There, I've got 4 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these, and you just grab what you need, basically. At least for me, it's kind of all about finding the most efficient way to organize everything. So that way I kind of know where everything is and I'm not spending too much time screwing around trying to find my stuff, basically. That's at least my goal. So I too use the boat boxes pretty heavily. I use all 3 dividers. And the way that I generally break it down is I've got my fly boxes in the center. If you get the large of the Dry Creek boat boxes, you can fit a full-size Plan D boat box into there, which works great. Or you can fit pretty much any box. I mean, it's a big
It does give you a lot
compartment
of room.
for sure. Yeah. So I put my boat boxes in that center division. Generally on the left side, I've got like a rolled up rain jacket if I'm not already wearing my rain jacket. If I am, I've usually got my gloves in there if it's wintertime. If it's summertime, I've usually actually got my gloves too, my sun gloves in there. If it's summertime, I've got a buff in there. If it's wintertime, I've got a beanie or something like that in there. Then, like you said, water for sure. And I'm a big snacker, so I've got a bunch of snacks in that compartment. And then on the right-hand side, I keep all my tippet, my leaders, sink tips, poly leaders, basically anything else that doesn't fit. My tools are on that side too. So I kind of keep everything else basically in that right-hand side compartment. So that's kind of how I break that up. And then generally speaking, when you're on the boat too, you've got your boat box and that's holding all your hard tackle basically. And then you've usually got the Patagonia Stormfront roll top bag too. And that's something that I use pretty heavily as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one of my top bags. I love it. It's traveled all over the world with me. But never had an issue with it sitting on a tarmac, pouring rain. Everything straight dry to tossing it in the jet boat to tossing it in a float tube.
Yeah.
I mean, really, whatever you need, and it has plenty of room. I like to throw a set of clothes inside my dry bag that I bring on the boat.
Yeah.
For example, in case you fall in, you
Totally.
at least are able to change into some dry clothes.
Or, I mean, if you get hot, a lot of
Yeah.
times when we start in the mornings, especially out in Forks, or even out on the Yakima River, it's cold in the morning. Might be, 50 degrees, 40 degrees or whatever, which isn't awful or anything, but that's definitely like a puffy coat kind of weather. And then, basically by about noon, maybe 2 o'clock, gets pretty hot.
Yeah.
When that sun is beating down on you, it gets hot. And so if you're going to be out that long, a full day, really, you got to kind of be able to change your layers based off of the system, which is a big thing that I've kind of bought into is layering. You know what I mean? You're not wearing one giant puffy coat and then a t-shirt underneath, because then if it gets a little bit too hot for that puffy coat, you're now down to t-shirt weather. Whereas if you've got a base layer, you've got a light vest or whatever, then you've got a light puffy coat, and then you've got maybe your raincoat, or maybe you've got a hoodie or something like that on top. Then it kind of breaks up those layers. So as it gets a little bit warmer throughout the day, you just continually shed one layer until you're really comfortable, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of always keeps you kind of at the optimal comfort, I guess. You're in some pretty harsh conditions, especially out in Forks, for example. I mean, that's definitely not forgiving weather. Most of the time it's kind of pouring down rain on you. So you really figure out what gear system you like the best really quickly.
Yes.
You definitely figure out what works for you. Like Matt, for example, is basically never cold, no matter what. I think the most I ever see you wear is about one lightweight puffy coat. While on the other hand, I am extremely cold all the time. So, Matt can attest to it. I have it's an old Patagonia synthetic jacket that was meant for like super mountaineering, basically. And I'll wear that thing all the time out there. That is my favorite jacket. I also wear the Patagonia, Sims Fjord pants, which are, if you're not familiar with them, they're like a fleece jacket that's like 3 or 4 times the normal thickness of your average fleece, and much denser, all stacked into one pair of pants, basically. So it is definitely the warmest pant basically on the market that you can wear. So I generally have that on, and I've got an old Patagonia onesie that I wear underneath that. So
yeah,
I am definitely a cold person who wears a lot of layers. So for me, that roll top bag is a lifesaver, because as it starts to heat up first thing in the morning, I'm definitely wearing all those layers when we get into that boat. And generally by like midday, I'm down to like just my base layer and maybe a puffy coat. So like a lightweight puffy coat. So I definitely utilize that roll top bag a bunch. I also usually keep my camera in it, though now I've invested in some hard cases for my camera, some watertight hard cases from Pelican. So, but for a long time I kept my camera just in that roll top bag when we were shooting the videos for the shop. That's kind of how I did it. And I used to keep my little drone in there too. I used to keep roll top bag. I usually keep my lunch in there. Is that where you keep yours?
Yep.
Yeah. We like to bring a bunch of snacks on the trip with us. Snacks keep you warm too. The more you eat, the warmer you're going to be. So we eat a bunch of snacks, so I keep all those in there. And then a couple other things, like usually my cell phone, my wallet, my keys, my fishing license are all in that dry bag too. So that's kind of how I break down this system. If you're walking in, that is definitely not a practical system.
No.
That is a lot of stuff that kind of disappears in the boat. Because I've got an NRS fishing frame, so basically all you do is slide it underneath your seats. And that's basically it. And usually I've got a cooler in the boat too that we can throw drinks and stuff like that in. And that was true even when I had my drift boat. I kept a small Engel 35 cooler, which Engel, for those who don't know, is basically like a Yeti style cooler. I kind of like my Engel a little bit more, probably just because I'm a hipster and nobody else has an Engel cooler in Washington. That's kind of a southern thing for the most part. But they're great coolers, super simple latching system that kind of like flicks up basically. But I like those coolers a lot. And that's kind of my full setup, at least for the boat most of the time. And basically what I do, same as you, right? You just trade out your boat box depending on what you're actually fishing for. And really all that changes in my boat box is I'll change, like from mittens basically to the sun gloves and a gator for summertime, obviously, and basically what flies. The setup itself basically always stays the same. I've always got my flies in the center, and then it kind of works outward from there. If we're walking in, that's really where kind of bag choice becomes really dependent on both what fishery you're in and kind of where you're going and what you're doing. So I'm going to let Matt kind of break down what bags he has for walking in and kind of what he uses them for.
So I use the Simms Dry Creek Z sling. It just came out this year. It's great. It's waterproof. You can't blow out the zipper. Their new technology makes it to where you can't, even if you put a ton of pressure on it, doesn't actually blow the zipper. You can just zip down and zip back up, and it's sealed again.
Yeah, and that's a cool part. So the Dry Creek Z bags, sling bags and backpack, as well as hip pack, have been around for a long time. They used to use zipper that you would see on a dry suit. So really hard to zip close, same as their waders, really hard to zip closed, but it's airtight. You could squeeze the bag and the air wouldn't come out. They said basically that they had some problems where guys would like accidentally sit on the bag or they'd forget to unzip it a little bit when they would fly on a float plane or something like that, and it'd pop. Basically, the zipper, the air pressure inside of the bag would get too great, and it would just pop part of the zipper. Extremely expensive on anything that's like a zipper. Basically, you're looking at least an extra $100 just for the zipper, and that's at Simms cost. I mean, they're not price gouging you on the original zippered systems. It's just crazy expensive to get those zippers. So basically, what they did was they sought out a new company, and it's kind of like a really beefed up Ziploc bag almost. Style wise, that's how it looks, and kind of how it works. But it's a really beefed up, like hard plastic almost, right?
Yeah.
Basically Ziploc bag system. So it's really cool, like Matt was saying, because if you were to sit on it or something like that, you just zip it back down and zip it back up. And it's not fragile. Like it's not going to bust open easily. You're not in normal use are you going to have that happen. If you were to sit on it or something, it might happen. But other than that, it's definitely not going to happen to you.
Oh, exactly.
So not something to worry about at all. It's just kind of a nice added feature. And the other really nice part is the old zippers were extremely hard to open. They even had like pull tabs on them that they would sew in, and that was true of pretty much everybody's dry bags. And you would have to hold the pull tab, and then you'd kind of like pretty hard pull the other way to get those bags to open and kind of get them started. And you would have to like lube up the zipper when you first got it. They were a little bit, kind of like time consuming, really. These new bags, I mean, it's arguably easier than zipping up a normal zipper.
It is, and the nice thing about these new ones too is they have a lot more room, but it's not bulky on your back.
Yes.
So I mean, you can fit a jacket in there. You can fit your box or two of flies, a spare reel maybe, and you can attach a rod to it. So
Yeah.
that part's really nice as well.
It is.
You can carry around a spare rod in its tube, like I usually do, like at the
Mm-hmm.
sound in case I break a line.
Yeah, totally.
Or break the rod or whatever happens. I have backup already in my thing, so I
Yep.
just pull it, slap it together, and I'm ready to fish again.
Yeah, because if you don't bring it back up, that's when you break your rod.
That's always when you break your rod.
If you bring it back up, you're probably not going to break your rod.
Nope.
That just seems to be the way it goes most of the time. It's the day that you're unprepared, and you're probably unprepared because you haven't broken a rod in a long time, and you've been carrying around a backup, and you say to yourself one day, I'm not going to carry a backup today, and that's the day that you break your rod for sure. Guarantee it.
Well, exactly, and especially if you're hiking in and that happens, it's
yeah, your day is done if you don't have a backup rod. You're just hanging out.
Exactly. You know, and then these dry creeks, they also actually have pockets this time.
Yeah,
so
which is a
inside-
big deal because
Yes.
dry bags traditionally are just a giant compartment. There's nothing inside of them.
For organization,
yeah, they're
usually
just- they're just-
whatsoever.
Empty bags. And the reason is it's extremely expensive for them to weld that material together, the waterproof material. So they can't sew a pocket onto the inside of it because that would then puncture the outside material. And it would be crazy expensive for them to weld a bunch of pockets basically onto the existing waterproof material.
Right.
So they've kind of solved that issue basically with a drop-in, right? Basically, yeah.
Yep.
So it is a drop-in compartment almost.
Yeah, I mean it's not expandable, but it's just welded to the inside to where you have tippet, you have a place to put your mitten clamps, leaders,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So then you just have your flies, and you have your reel or whatever. So there's just not scattered stuff inside, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's definitely a nice feature to have. And then, but you've also got a Patagonia one, same as me. So I don't use a waterproof sling. And that's kind of your go-to now. That's a recent purchase for you, but that's kind of your new go-to for walking in.
Big time, and
Yeah.
I'm really happy with it.
Yeah,
Really
it's
happy with
definitely
it.
a cool bag for sure. So I've got the same kind of bag as you for the next one, which is a non-waterproof sling from Patagonia. So that's the Stealth Atom sling, which is kind of I would say their most popular, at least it was at the shop, the most popular sling bag. And that's just kind of a standard sling. It's got a couple other features to it depending on how old your bag is. But it's a pretty basic one. It's got a dry bag inside of it for your license or your phone or your keys, basically. But other than that, it's kind of a 3 storage bag system with kind of like a fold-out workstation on it, basically. So there's a little box for you to keep your couple flies in, really, with a foam pouch on it. That's generally what I use if I'm walking in. Most of the time, I don't need that much stuff walking in. So that's kind of my go-to. Most of my stuff I don't need to keep dry for the most part. And if I'm walking in, generally speaking, that's going to be like summertime for trout. If I'm doing like a small creek or something, that's kind of my go-to. If it is the winter time and I'm walking in somewhere, I'm going to use that big Patagonia Stormfront roll top bag. Just because, again, that's waterproof. I like roll top bags because it's super easy for me to open it up, grab my stuff, and then just do 3 or more rolls and click it back together. Super simple for me to kind of deal with. So I've got my waterproof bag covered on that front with the backpack. And then I've got my sling bag for when I want to trout fish. The one thing for me, I don't use the sling bag in the wintertime because I like the little bit of extra space that I have for storing like a bigger puffy coat or something like that. Or if it gets hot, I can store my raincoat, if I'm doing a bunch of hiking. But to me, a sling bag in the wintertime just isn't worth it for me because it's one strap, so I get that, but it goes over your casting arm. If you're a right-handed caster, it goes over your right shoulder. To me, that just doesn't really make sense for me because I'm like, why would I? If I only have one strap, it's not that beneficial for it to go over my casting arm. I don't really care if there's another strap going over my left shoulder. So I generally wear the backpack, and then I just get out of the water if I need to, adjust with my setup or something, get to my flies. So that is the benefit to a sling bag, is you don't have to get out of the water. You just flip it around to the front of you. So I definitely see that. A lot of times I don't need that much stuff. So a lot of times I have an older OPST roll top hip bag, which is kind of designed off of an old Sims Dry Creek roll top hip bag. So they're kind of almost the same. It's the OPST one's a little bit cheaper version of that, basically. But it's a good bag. I like hip bags a lot. Most of the time I'm not doing a lot of super deep weighting. And if I am, I just take the bag off and just hold it up above my head. But I just like how comfortable that is, because then the strap goes over my left shoulder to support the bag, and kind of keeps me to the bare essentials. I keep like one. Most of the time when I'm wearing that, I'm either fishing in the Sound or I'm fishing on the coast swinging flies. And I'm just kind of going back and forth between the truck and kind of moving around to spots. So I don't need that much stuff. I kind of know, because I'm only going to be gone for like an hour or two, and then I'll be back at the truck. So I kind of know what I'm going to wear basically when I'm hiking in. And so I'll wear that one, and I can keep about 3 fly boxes in there, 2 things to tip it, and a pair of hemostats, which for me, 99% of the time is more than enough stuff, really. So I use that a lot. That's probably, as far as walking in, that's probably my most common one that I wear. Just because it's really comfortable for me going over my left shoulder. I don't notice it when I'm casting or anything, so I like that a lot. And it's waterproof on the bottom side, so I don't worry about if the bottom of it touches water, basically. Doesn't bother me at all. So I wear that a lot when I'm out beach fishing in the Sound, or like I wore it a bunch last year when we were doing a bunch of pink fishing, and I just kept it set up all summertime for pink salmon. And we were going down really early in the morning, so I just kind of washed out. Basically how I do it is, if I fish out in the salt water with it, at the end of the day, because it's a waterproof bag, I just fill it with water, like fresh water in my sink. I just set it in my sink, fill it with warm fresh water, and that washes out, because none of my boxes that I use in the salt water are waterproof. It basically just fills up all my boxes with fresh water, and then I dump it out and leave it open on my kitchen counter, basically, and then it dries out by the next day. So pretty simple system for me to do that way. Kind of takes care of my needs as far as cleaning it goes, and I haven't had any corrosion on it, really. And I've probably had that thing for probably 4 or 5 years now, using it pretty heavily out in the salt water. So I like that bag a lot. That's kind of my go-to. I like hip bags. You're not a fan though, right? You don't like
I can't stand hip packs on me. It bugs me.
Just, you don't like how it feels?
I don't like how it feels, how it sits on my waist. Like, I want it on my back.
Sure.
And to me, sometimes I catch myself wading a little too deep, depending on the situation. Yeah. And having that on my hip. It's funny, like a waterproof one in particular starts to kind of work almost like a float on your butt. Yeah. So your butt starts to get picked up out of the water, for those who haven't felt that before. So it is, I get what Matt's saying. It is kind of a weird feeling. I really hate it if I'm not using a shoulder strap on it. It feels like too much weight, and like it's trying to peel off of my side. If I don't have the hip strap on. Sorry, not the hip strap, but the shoulder strap. And then I keep the hip strap pretty loose, so that way it slides around me really easily. That's kind of my go-to. I get what you're saying, though. It is kind of a different feeling. It is, yeah.
Especially like some people tighten the hip belt almost like it's like a backpacking pack, you know? And then they don't use a hip shoulder strap at all. And I don't like that feeling at all. It feels like it's kind of like falling off of my back basically the whole time. So for me, that's not the way to go. I would say for anyone interested in bags, go to your local fly shop and try them on. And The important part is people tend to get pretty caught up in like right now, what's the most comfortable. But you got to think about, I'm going to put weight in this. And so helpful a lot of times to have like a water bottle that you set in it to kind of feel how it feels with a little bit of weight in it. And the other things to think about when you're looking at bags is if you're hiking in, how tight is the trail? Like if you're out in Forks, it's a lot of bushwhacking. And so you need a bag that isn't hanging off of your back 4 feet. You know, you need something pretty streamlined that doesn't hang off the sides of you either, because it gets hung up on a bunch of stuff. Because you're kind of like ducking under logs and over logs and all sorts of stuff. So I would say that's definitely something to look at. What else do you look at when you're buying a bag?
Functionality, really.
Like, what are you going to use it for?
Exactly. What am I using it for? You know, I try to imagine what I'm going to fill in these pockets. You know, even when I'm at the fly shop, you know, you can go ahead and be like, hey, I want to fill this stuff with, you know, what I would,
stuff. Totally.
would fish with and try it on.
Any fly shop will be cool with that.
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, that's the way I did it. And, you know, I just, you know, like I said, personally, not a go-to for me.
Yeah.
But the chest one is a lot different. I do, especially if you're hiking in.
Really? So I have an old Patagonia chest pack, and I actually loosen the neck strap super loose, and then there's a strap usually that goes around your sternum. I loosen that one pretty loose too, and I wear it like a hip bag basically, is how I do it. I absolutely hate chest packs. Like I can't stand anything basically on the front of me. So I can't wear I hate vests. Patagonia used to make a bag that was basically a vest on the front strap of their sling. I think they still make that one. But basically it's just 3 big pockets on the front of it. Not a fan of that either. I don't like anything in front of me. I feel like I'm going to get like my fly line caught on it, or when I'm double hauling, especially a chest pack in particular, because that's pretty big. I tend to like smack my hand on it when I'm double hauling. It just seems like it gets in the way. And that's probably more in my head than it is in reality. But to me, it feels like it gets in the way. And I don't want to deal with that. You know what I mean? I'd rather have something like a hip bag or even a sling. Just something that gets out of the way and is behind me when I'm fishing, so I don't notice it at all. And then when I do need it, it just slips around to the front, and then I can deal with it. But I hate having something in front of me when I'm fishing.
Well, I've really noticed people who Euro-nymph, that's like their go-to.
Oh, chest bags?
Is the chest bags, because it's all quick and easy. It's
huge for Euro-nymphing guys is the chest bags. And they do like... they have a bunch of, you know, because it's all little nymphs. They have a bunch of really little fly boxes. Your nymph guys get crazy with their organization.
They do. It's amazing.
Yeah, they've got usually 5-6 boxes, and they're all labeled, you know, based off of what they are. And yeah, they just pull out, you know, what they need basically. To be honest, my box usually isn't that organized. It usually starts the season out, like when I'm preparing for a season, I get all jacked up and organize my fly boxes and organize my boat bags. By the end of the season, it's like just a mess totally. Finding flies at the bottom of the boat box and all sorts of stuff. So,
well, I'm sure because of everybody being locked away, everybody's boxes are probably
pretty
organized right now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, that kind of breaks down all the bags that I use. For me, that kind of covers everything. And then when I travel, so when we drive out to Forks or something like that, I just kind of toss my waders and my boots in the back of my truck, because I got a truck bed. Matt, you don't have a truck though.
No.
And so you, because you got to throw it in the back cargo area, you use the Simms taco bag.
Yes, I love that thing. You know, you literally lay it out, open it up, lay it out, step over it, take your boots off, take your waders off, literally drop it in that bag, zip it up, toss it in the back of your truck or in the back of my car. Yep. And if I'm going to be staying that night in Forks, I take that out and I go dry it, at the hotel or at the campsite with the fire. But, if I'm just heading straight home, I leave in a taco bag. As soon as I get home, I wash it and hang it up in the shower.
Yeah.
So
that said, we do a lot of camping out in Forks, especially in the kind of fall, winter time. That's usually when we're out there the most. We don't do much of the springer fishing, though I'd like to do some more of that this year. But so most of the time we're kind of out there when, it's a rainforest, so it rains regardless of the season, but pretty much kind of like August on. We're out there at least once, like as in 2 days a month, I would say at least. More likely we're out there like 2, maybe on a good week we're probably out there 3 times in a week. Out there fishing, me and Matt together. So we do a lot of camping and fishing out there together. Matt's kind of my main fishing buddy, so we do a bunch of fishing together, but it is really hard to dry waders when you camp. Extremely difficult to get your waders dry. I've tried lots of things over the years. I think the thing that I've found that works the best is on the car ride to the campsite from fishing, keeping your waders on and blasting the heat usually is kind of the best way to dry them out for the most part. The Patagonia Danner boots do a decent, both I and Matt use the Patagonia Danner boots, which is pretty thin. Like, the Sims have like that neoprene layer on the inside. The Patagonias don't. They do a decent job of drying out pretty quickly. The bottom of them stays pretty wet, because it's real leather. The bottom of them stays pretty wet, but the feet on waders is really the tough one. Like that just doesn't dry out. And if it's winter time, a lot of the times it gets frozen overnight. So that's brutal. So I always keep a big tarp in my truck now. And I've got like one big, I guess you call it like a teepee prop, basically pole, that we prop it up with kind of just a little bit away from the fire. And that's usually how we hang up our waders to dry. Matt just got a fancy new tent that's got like a hanging area. It's got like a giant vestibule on it. And we're going to hang waders in that. At least that's our plan. He hasn't got the tent yet. So we'll figure out if it's
it's what it says it's for. So
yeah, we'll see if it's,
that's the only reason why I bought it.
Yeah, if it's sturdy enough to hold up some G4Zs. For those who don't know, G4Zs are pretty darn stiff. They're almost like Carhartts, like how like beefy they are. And we're talking about the last generation, so the newest ones quite a lot softer.
Yes.
They're almost like wearing fleece pants when you're out there moving around. Like it's pretty substantial how much more movement you have in the newest ones versus any other wader, let alone versus the old G4Zs, which were kind of the premium in like stiffness, which is cool when you're feeling them in the shop. And like they do make you feel very confident in them. Like you're like, these are like beefy, you know what I mean?
Oh, you're like I can walk through you're like sticker bush.
Yeah,
and I'm not worried.
Like, this is armor that I got on right now, which is not true. They are just as likely to puncture as the new G4Zs. Just kind of a face fabric change that they did that Gore-Tex was able to do. So they've actually got the newest waders are more breathable, more puncture resistant, and way more comfy to wear.
Yes.
But so we've both got the old ones, so they're pretty hard to dry out just because they're super stiff. So you basically got to hang them, and they hold their exact shape when you hang them. Like those things could stand up on their own. That said, I absolutely love my G4Zs, yes. And I know you do too. So definitely not a knock against them. They're amazing waders. But the taco bag is a game changer for you, at least, because you got to throw it in the back of your car, so it keeps everything kind of from getting wet. And then if you're saltwater fishing, do you go home and kind of just rinse them out in the shower basically when you get home?
Yeah, so if I throw my waders in the taco bag
Yeah.
from the salt,
Yeah.
I wash the taco bag too.
Yes, of course.
So
Yeah. Or
all of
if
it.
you don't do that, to be clear, your zipper is going to rust out within like a week.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. You want to soak it in that fresh water, and
Yeah.
that's why I like doing the shower, because it's rotating, moving water, pushing
Yeah,
it
exactly.
through.
It's always fresh water. That's what a lot of people end up doing, like buckets and stuff like that. But if there's already, dried or calcified salt on your reel or on your fly line or whatever, there's definitely dried salt on your fly line. People don't know that, but if you just don't wash your fly line, like it's gonna be covered in like a salt, basically residue. Next time you use it, like as you're stripping in, you'll have salt residue come off on your fingers. So that I totally agree with you. I do not use a bucket method because once you dunk your stuff in, you basically just made that whole bucket salt water now.
Yep.
And it's not, the saline percentage or whatever isn't the same. Like it's not as salty as the sound is, but there's still definitely salt in it. So 100% agree. I generally use like a hose, just lay them out on my lawn and rinse everything off really thoroughly. Or now I don't have much of a lawn. And what lawn I do have, my dog uses as a potty. So I don't want to wash my stuff off there. So a lot of times, I just take it into the shower and just, spray everything off in the shower. And that works pretty well as long as you clean up the shower afterwards. So that way your roommates or your wife or whoever doesn't hate you.
Yeah, the wife. Yeah, I learned the hard way.
I'm sure Alicia let you have it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big deal, is having something to throw, if you don't have a truck bed, something to throw your waders into to keep basically your car nice. And it doesn't have to be the taco bag. That's probably my favorite because it's got mesh on the top of it, so it like breathes.
It does. It has two breathing areas on the top. Which
is really important with waders, because the last thing you want, once you get mold in your waders, they reek like permanently, and the mold always wants to come back. And that's true of your rain jacket. That's true of your dry bags. That's true of anything. Your cork, especially on your rod.
Yep.
You can't let mold form, because once it does, it's game over. Like you can scrub it thoroughly, but it'll always come back. So definitely an important part. They make like the taco, or no, they call it the roll top burrito bag or something, right? From Fish Pond. Yep. Fish Pond has I think it's the burrito bag.
I think it is too. Yeah, because it folds
out.
Yep.
So Fish Pond's got the burrito bag, which is a cool one because it's got like kind of a standing platform that you stand on. The Sims one is cool too, the taco bag. So it's a taco shape. And then you unzip it all the way. The zippers are actually cut a little bit long, and so it folds out into a giant circle that you stand on when you get changed, which is also nice. Again, that's just protecting your waders from the concrete. Like you don't want to have the bare neoprene stepping on the concrete. That said, I'm not very good about that. I definitely step on my waders to get them off. Which is not good. You shouldn't do that. You should pull them off of your foot, kind of by the heel. Basically, you grab hold of the heel and pull them off. I don't know how many people do that. I've never seen anybody do it.
It takes too much time.
Pretty much everybody I know at the end of the day just kind of steps on the toes and pulls them off.
Well, a lot of the times we're standing there in downpouring rain.
That too, yeah. You're kind of rushing.
Don't care at that point
to get out of your waders, yeah.
And get those boots on and get in the truck.
Yeah. And waders are kind of a funny one. It kind of comes down to how much time you spend in the water. If you're spending a lot of time in the water, going to something like a G4Z or even a Patagonia, I forget what they call them now. They're like the Expedition, right? The newest zippered ones. They used to call them the Rio Gallego. They went through a whole branding thing and totally changed up the wader system. About a year ago now?
I believe so, yeah.
Probably a little bit less than a year ago now. So they are definitely new waders. They're cool. I think the Patagonia waders are really good. They're not quite as breathable as the Sims waders. But they're kind of not meant to be. I mean, the Patagonia ones are a little bit more feature rich. Like they got like knee pads built into them, which is a nice feature. You know, if you're doing a lot of like casting from your knees or, spending a bunch of time on your knees, basically. And the Sims ones are really good just because they're breathable. Like if you're hiking in, they breathe extremely well, which is big. I mean, like a lot, especially up here in particular, you're doing a lot of bushwhacking a lot of times to get into locations. Any zippered wader is going to be better than a non-zippered wader in terms of its breathability because you have a giant relief zipper that you can unzip, which I use really heavily. I just unzip it when I'm hiking in and just hiking with it unzipped because you don't need the waterproof upper body.
Oh, exactly. Yep.
So for me, that's kind of my go-to. For a long time, though, I didn't have zippered waders. I had, I got a pair of Hodgmans when I was a little kid. And then when I started working at the shop, I got a pair of Sims Headwater waders, which are Gore-Tex wader. They're not, this G series is kind of the Sims' main Gore-Tex wader. So they got the G3s and the G4s. And then that's kind of broken down even within that into boot foots versus non-boot foot and all sorts of stuff. But for the main part, basically the body of the wader is either a G4 or a G3, and the G4 basically has a thicker material that continues up higher. That's kind of the benefit to going up to a G4Z. A Z comes with the zipper on it. You can get just the G4 Pro, which doesn't have the zipper. Not really a fan of the G4 Pro personally, just because it seems like you're spending all that money, and for me, the zipper is so worth it.
I just recently got into the zipper game.
You got into them last summer when we were pink fishing, right?
Pink fishing because my G3s
sprung a leak.
Yeah, but I had them for like 6 years or something like that.
Yeah, you had them for a long time before they
and then I had for like 5 years Freestones before that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sims makes high quality product, and like we said, the more that you fish, basically the nicer waders you'll end up getting. Because really what it comes down to is it could be like 35 degrees, and I could be standing in the water in all my equipment. And yeah, it's really expensive equipment for sure. Like there's a lot of money spent on that stuff. But I am as comfortable as I am sitting at this desk inside when it's like 65 out today. So, for me, it's just about being comfortable at the end of the day. It allows me to stay out there fishing for longer. It allows me to fish more often because I don't care about the weather.
Well, it allows you to enjoy fishing and not worrying about shivering or leaking, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You can just focus on the fishing, and that's it.
Yep. And me as someone who gets cold really easily, I made the investment probably 2 years ago. I think Anil convinced me to get a pair of boot foot waders. And for me, that was a game changer. Most of the time in the wintertime, we're just kind of fishing out of the boat. And then we might jump out and walk, 200 yards downstream at most, I would say. So boot foots are definitely warmer, but they're not good for hiking. They're probably the worst option for hiking. So I would say if you're planning on hiking more than, if you're probably going to cover more than a half a mile in the whole day, I wouldn't want to wear boot foots. But if you're not, if you're hanging out on the boat, they're about as easy to put on and off as it gets. And they're really warm, really, really warm on your feet. The reason being is that nothing's wet on the inside, right? So with a normal wader, you've got a neoprene booty. Basically what happens is the cold water comes into your boot and kind of circulates around the outside of that neoprene booty. The neoprene booty keeps you warm, depending on what company you have. Basically, neoprene is almost like a foam, so it's got little air cells inside of it that then get trapped and heat you up. So that's why the thicker the neoprene, the more air cells it has in it. Works like any other insulation. So, like on Sims booties and stuff, I think it's 5 mil neoprene on them. So that's definitely the most common thickness. Patagonia does like a grid fleecing on the inside of theirs, which is supposedly also supposed to help with circulation of warm air. But that's definitely something to keep in mind, is that boot foots are going to keep you warmer, but they're definitely not as versatile as a normal stocking foot wader. The important thing, though, is sizing with stocking foot waders. That's what's going to keep you the most warm. Most of the time, people end up getting too small of boots without realizing it, and it ends up getting really hot. You get like hot spots in them, because wading boot is built around a normal last, like a normal hiking shoe last. So most of the time people have to go up a full size, at least in Sims. I can't speak to corkers or anything like that. We never carried corkers, so I'm not familiar with their sizing. But we've done Patagonia for a long time, and we did Sims for a long time, obviously, while I was there. And you guys still do Patagonia, the Danner boots and the Sims
Yeah, we
boots.
still do
So definitely still, in our opinion, the most popular boots, and definitely I think the best boots are definitely on the leading edge. So they, usually you got to go up a full size. So if you wear a 12 normally, you'd wear a 13. And the reason being is that it's a normal last, and you have to adjust for, one, thick socks, but also two, you've got 5 millimeters of neoprene completely encasing your foot. So you need enough space in that for that insulation to work properly. It'd be like if you had like a down sleeping bag, right? But you compressed the down sleeping bag so that way it didn't have the ability to trap air. Because that's what's going to keep you warm is that it's trapping air in there. So yes, you definitely got to go up a size. You definitely see that a lot with people who are like, man, my feet were freezing, and I couldn't get them to be warm, and it was like painful how cold it was. Generally, that's somebody who's got too small of a boot.
Yep.
And so just by going up a size, your feet will probably be warmer. Boot foots, I would say, are kind of the step beyond that. Like if that's not solving your issue, then you'd move on to boot foots. And for me, that's kind of what I went to, just for comfort and everything. They don't make a G4Z boot foot anymore. If they were still making them, I would have bought one, for sure, but they stopped making them. So I've got a pair of G3 boot foots, that I wear. Matt doesn't get very cold, so he doesn't wear the boot foots.
No,
Yeah.
I don't really need to.
Yeah, you're totally fine in your G4Zs.
I get hot wearing like the G3 Tactical and stuff like
Yeah.
with the
Yep.
puffy underneath.
Yeah, and that's something that Matt's going to be reviewing probably in the upcoming week. We'll probably be posting that. We're going to start putting out some reviews. You'll be able to check them out on our YouTube page. It'll be called The Gear Shed series, basically. So it'll just say The Gear Shed, episode 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 and what he's breaking down. So he's going to do a puffy coat, the Tough Puff, from Patagonia, and then he's also doing the G3 tactical jacket. For us, I would say that we will not review something if we haven't used it for a couple months, basically, at a minimum. Both those things Matt's had for a long time. We've had those for over a year. I don't wear the G3 tactical. I wear the Patagonia River Salt jacket. That's kind of my go-to. It's a little bit beefier for me, and I just kind of like the pockets. For me, the biggest thing is it's got rubberized cuffs to it, and those create a really good seal around my hand for me. But you love your G3 tactical. That's kind of your go-to, right?
Yeah.
And that's a much more versatile jacket than mine. It is. Mine is a really thick, the River Salt from Patagonia is a really thick jacket. Like there's no way that I could wear that thing in the summertime. If there was like a rain or anything like that, even the fall, it's kind of like borderline. Sometimes I just wear that. Whereas the G3 tactical, you could wear no problem in the summertime. And you'd be more than fine. Like it breathes really, really well. Like I would not want to wear my Patagonia River Salt if I was hiking in. It traps in the air. which for me is not a problem most of the time in the wintertime. I'm usually cold anyway, so I don't mind the extra layer. It does a real good job of keeping me dry, and it's really durable, but it doesn't breathe real well. So anytime that you're making a purchasing decision in fly fishing, you got to be realistic with yourself about, one piece of gear isn't the best piece of gear. It's the best piece of gear for this particular application. So you got to kind of weigh out, am I a person who gets cold really easily? Am I a person who overheats really easily? All things that you got to kind of break down when you're making these gear purchasing decisions. And that's why you go to the fly shop and talk to the people there, because they know a lot about the product and they can kind of walk you through it. And if you explain really well what type of fishing you're doing, they can get you the right gear. If you come into the fly shop and you go, hey, look, I am bushwhacking a lot. I'm hiking about a mile in to these locations. I get cold really easily, but I heat up a lot when I also hike. And it really matters to me that I have really well sealed cuffs. They will be able to walk you through your options, and they'll be able to walk you through kind of the pros and cons of one product versus another. Because that's really the important part is, like I said, one product like the G3 Tactical isn't a better jacket than the River Salt, and the River Salt isn't a better jacket than the G3 Tactical. It's just different applications.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a lot of hiking, or you're someone like Matt who gets hot really easily, Patagonia River Salt is not the jacket for you. Be a terrible choice.
Yes.
Definitely go with the G3 Tactical. If you're doing a lot of hiking, that's a really good breathing jacket. You can ventilate it really easily. It's a fantastic jacket. Vice versa, if you're a person who does almost no hiking in, because I got a boat, so for the most part, if I'm wintertime fishing where I want that beefy jacket, I'm not hiking in. For me, I don't really care that much about breathability. All I really cared about was that my cuffs are sealed off really well and that it keeps me dry. And my Patagonia River Salt does both those things really well. So it's just a different jacket, that's all. And that's true of most things in fly fishing. Most fly rods, most pack choices, pretty much everything. Fly line, I would say that's a pretty hit or miss thing. There's not really, like one's better for... as far as brand wise, one's better for this. Brands make really good fly lines in particular applications, basically. And you got to kind of figure that out for yourself for the most part, like kind of what works for you. But a lot of stuff within fly fishing comes down to personal preference. If you want something really, even fly line, if you want something really high turnover, you like a really short head, really long head, Matt's going to be breaking down fly lines probably in the next, probably three weeks from now.
Episodes, yeah.
He'll probably do a video in in our informational series. So this Friday, it's going to actually be a video on how to tie a stonefly. As well as kind of a stonefly bugger. So mixing the woolly bugger that we learned to tie last week with a stonefly. So that way you've got kind of some variation. So you've got kind of a nymph, how to tie a nymph now, and you've got how to tie a streamer pattern. We're going to cover how to tie a dry fly pattern, and then we're going to start kind of breaking down some gear selection with Matt at the fly shop. So look forward to that in the future. Next week, we're going to talk with Lucas Choate about the Chehalis system. He's a swing-only guide here in Washington for steelhead. It's pretty much all that Lucas does is swing flies for steelhead. He used to guide up in Alaska for trout too. He didn't do that this year. Stayed down here. He is kind of from down south, kind of the greater Olympia area. And now he lives kind of right by Aberdeen almost, so he's kind of right by the Wainuchi there. And that's kind of his home waters for the most part. So we're going to talk to him about, last year they closed down the Wainuchi and the Satsup and Chehalis system, for part of the winter steelhead system. So we're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk to him about the returns, kind of what he sees, his choices in kind of setup and rivers, and just kind of break down swinging the fly all next week. So look forward to that without anything else to say. That's it.